fastest teams to practice today. Kyle
Casey Kane, we congratulate him, his third career pole.
It's all three Hendrick Motorsports in the front.
There's a few movers and shakers out there.
Carl Edwards free falling for a couple
to victory lane is Joey Logano.
Get the inside line on who's fast and who's last before setting your NASCAR fantasy race team lineup this weekend. This is the Inside Line on MRN.com. Presented by Hercules Tires. Now, here are your fantasy experts, Robbie Mays and Tyler Burnett.
5 days removed from arguably the greatest NASCAR Sprint Cup Series finish in history, we welcome you to the hot Atlanta version of the Inside Line. This is Robbie Mays. I'm Tyler Burnett. Robbie, what a race in Daytona. What can you make of what happened at the world's most famous beach?
That was the culmination, Tyler, of 10 of the greatest days of racing that we've seen in Daytona for a very long time. The weather was perfect all the entire time that everybody was down there. And then the racing on the weekend, on the second weekend, the truck race was amazing. The Xfinity race was amazing. And then you run 499.9 miles and lose by a foot and a half. It's incredible, and I think it's a testament to how great the series is now. That we can run that far, and it comes down to a piece of paper. Okay, that's the width that Martin Truex lost that race by, and Denny Hamlin won it by. But it changes Denny Hamlin's life forever. He is now a Daytona 500 champion, and that is one of the things that he will be remembered for throughout his entire career.
It was highly intriguing to hear the emotions on the radio between Kenseth, who says it might have been the most heartbreaking race he's ever raced in his life, and then you have Truex, who said he thought he won it, and he didn't. And then Denny Hamlin, of course, was crying on the radio and says, I need to throw up. Yeah. He was so excited about winning that race, and obviously his biggest race in his career. All right, coming up today on the program, we'll talk to Regan Smith, fresh off his 8th place finish in the Golden Corral Chevrolet at Tommy Baldwin Racing. He's also a fantasy guru, so that's going to be pretty exciting to talk to Regan Smith. We'll also have our picks. We got a lot of love on Twitter last week as Robbie posted our graphics of the picks for our fantasy team. So we'll have those coming up, and also we'll have our winner towards the end of the show. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Inside Line presented by Hercules Tire.
The Inside Line will return in just a moment.
O'Reilly. If your vehicle isn't stopping like it used to, visit O'Reilly Auto Parts for the Spring Break Deals event. Take advantage of O'Reilly's Do It Right rebate and get a $20 O'Reilly gift card by mail when you buy a set of Brake Best Select pads and a pair of rotors. O'Reilly Auto Parts, better prices every day. Limits apply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Donnie Schatz joining us.
This is Winged Nation with Steve Post and Kendra Jacobs.
The stat that just jumps off the page. 178 consecutive races without a DNF.
You know, now that it's something that you brought up, I'm sure it'll probably end that streak sooner than later. But those guys know the feel that I'm looking for in my race car, and they know that if I get that feel, that I'm going to be able to maneuver and try to keep myself out of trouble.
Winged Nation every Tuesday at noon, exclusively on MRN.com.
Motor Racing Network, glad to have you aboard for our coverage of practice, something we will be doing all throughout the year.
They are pretty close in practice.
You said you learned a lot in practice.
We can have a good, clean practice.
How many teams are going to opt out of practice?
Get this practice session underway.
As we close out practice.
What are we talking about? Practice? We're talking about practice, man.
We are talking practice. Sprint Cup Series practice on the Motor Racing Network. Join us all season long on MRN.com and the MRN app. Welcome back to the Inside Line. Here are your hosts, Robbie Mays and Tyler Burnett.
If you haven't joined us already, join the other 630 people that joined our league last week in the NASCAR.com Fantasy Live. For some reason, our league was tied at 100 people, Robbie, last year, and then we called NASCAR Media Group. They opened it up for us the day before the Daytona 500, and 530 people and more counting right now have joined our league. So get to it, right? You got to join the league.
Absolutely. NASCAR.com Fantasy Live. Go on there, search for MRN Inside Line, and you'll find the league, and we're up to 636, I think was the last number that I saw. Going back to last week, we had various outcomes. The two of us. I think I finished 79th. I think you were 108th or something like that. But still, though, at that point in time, there were over 500 people in the league. So top 20%. That's a pretty good day. Especially considering the fact that it's a plate race. Big name guys like Junior, I think a lot of people may have had Chase Elliott. They crashed out early, so it was a very differing strategies last week at Daytona. This weekend in Atlanta, though, things may be a little bit more straightforward, but at the same time, they're not more straightforward because of the new rules package.
That's right, and I mentioned to some people in the office, that was the first time ever on my fantasy team a guy did not wreck in a restrictor plate race, and I still finished, 108th. So I was pretty happy with that. I mean, we were in the top echelon of the league. Congratulations to Sam Frey, who won. We don't have him on Twitter. We don't really know who he is, but he's joined our league. Jamie_Mac #1 is his fantasy team name. So congratulations to him. Hopefully you join us this week, and you can play along, and maybe you'll be a winner, and we'll mention you next week on the Inside Line. All right, this week, going to the Atlanta Motor Speedway. A worn-out surface, tire fall-off will be a huge concern, and Jimmy Johnson's talked about that. Even with the low downforce package, we'll see tire fall-off at Atlanta, and you're going to have to save your tires.
Absolutely. Atlanta is all about tire management. You can go out there and run fast for 3 or 4 laps, but you're going to suffer when you get to lap 45, lap 50. The tire fall-off is almost 2 to 3 seconds throughout the course of a run. And when you're looking at your league this weekend, a couple of guys that you need to remember to include on your league are guys that perform well when their cars don't handle well. They perform well when the track is loose, it's slick, it's going to be warm this weekend. So that's some things you need to keep track of when you pick your lineup this weekend.
So we've run this low downforce package twice last year. I printed off both the finishes and also Atlanta finish. That's where I went off for my team this week. So this is what you're going to hear. First off, I'm going to go over some of the teams that I like. Joe Gibbs Racing at Kentucky and Darlington are the 2 races that we ran the low downforce package. 4 of their cars were in the top 5. Of course, Kyle Busch won the race. At Darlington, 2 of their cars were in the top 5. Who won that race? Carl Edwards from Joe Gibbs Racing. So Joe Gibbs Racing is very good at both of those low downforce packages last season. Also, Team Penske, both Brad and Joey had top 10s at Kentucky and Darlington. They both also had top 10s at Atlanta. So Team Penske's on my team most likely. Maybe should be on your team as well. Jimmy Johnson, defending winner of this race. He led 92 laps last year. And, of course, Kevin Harvick. Those are going to be some of the guys you'll see on our team. So, Robbie Mays, let's tee it up. Atlanta Motor Speedway, your #1 pick.
My #1 pick this weekend is going to be the defending Sprint Cup Series champion, Kyle Busch. He's $27.50. More than worth it to put him on my team. 17 starts at Atlanta Motor Speedway. He's won here twice in the spring of 2008 and in 2013. He didn't run this race last year, obviously because his leg was broken. 4 top 5s, 5 top 10s, a 15.9 average finish. 12.4 is his 10-race average finish, and his driver rating is 92.8. The thing I like best about this pick, an old, worn-out, slick racetrack with a new low downforce package, you're going to slip and slide around. I'll take the 18 any day. I've already said that today. Remember, he won the first race. We tried this out last year at Kentucky in July. A 7.3 average finish on 1.5-mile racetracks in 2015 for Kyle Busch. That's second best in the league, only to Brad Keselowski.
Kyle Busch is a very good pick. There's a lot of guys who are good picks this week. Joey Logano's on my team, $27.75 on NASCAR.com. I mentioned his stats. And going into the future, he is unbelievable at some of these racetracks we go to. To me, Logano is the hottest talent in the garage right now. And last season, he rattled off 6 straight top 10s after his 500 victory. Joey Logano is a guy you need to have on your team now and moving forward. The next 2 guys I talk about, they're also on my fantasy team. You need to have him for the future as well. Jimmy Johnson, he's a defending winner of this race at Atlanta. He's great at Vegas. He's great at really any 1.5-mile racetrack. Solid at Phoenix and Auto Club in Martinsville, some of his best racetracks. He costs $26.50. Martin Truex Jr., he's like Logano. Last year when it came to this 7-race stretch, he was unbelievable. He was in the top 10 every single race. 2nd at Vegas, 7th at Phoenix, 8th at Auto Club. Martin Truex Jr. is going to be on my team moving forward. And then my last 2 picks are Ty Dillon. He's on my team. He's driving the 14 for Tony Stewart this year. And also Landon Castle. He's driving the 38 for Front Row Motorsports. Seems to me like a better pick at the $6.50 range. How does your rest of your team round out?
After I got Kyle Busch, I'm going Joey Logano as well, 27.75 this weekend. His 9 starts at Atlanta. His best finish is second in 2013. He took a long time to figure out this racetrack in the Sprint Cup Series, but once he did, he's been pretty good the last 2 or 3 years. Last season, he started from the pole, led 84 laps, and finished 4th in this race. Go back to 2013, he led 78 laps and finished 2nd in that race. His average finish is a 19.6, but it's getting better as he goes along. I think this team is in position to pick up where they left off last year. And if you ask Joey in the offseason, are you afraid of losing the magic that you had last season? He said no, because we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. 2 years in a row, Joey Logano probably should have won the championship. This year, though, if they maintain what they did last year, he's probably going to be the guy to hold the big trophy when we get to Homestead in November. My third pick is going to be Denny Hamlin. He cost $26.25, coming off that big win in Daytona last week. He led 96 laps in that race. And one of the things that I want to talk about right now, drivers who lead a bunch of laps over the course of a race can get you a lot of fantasy points. I was better last week than I should have been because Denny Hamlin led so much of that race. I also had Dale Earnhardt Jr., who I think led 18 laps last Sunday afternoon. But if you have a guy who's going to start at the front of the pack and he has a tendency to lead laps at a certain racetrack, that's going to get you points. Even if he doesn't get the best finish possible, it's still going to get you a lot of points. So Denny Hamlin is definitely a pick on Sunday. My next pick is Chris Buescher. He's at $7.50. I'm going with him again, hoping to rebound after the hard crash he had last weekend. 3 Xfinity Series starts. He was 4th last season in the Xfinity Series. And my final pick is Regan Smith at $10. 8th last week in the Daytona 500. 7 Sprint Cup Series starts at Atlanta Motor Speedway. His best finish is 14th. He was 9th last year in the Xfinity Series. So when we get him on here in just a couple of minutes, we're going to talk about his career at Atlanta Motor Speedway and why he should be on your fantasy team this week.
Yes, we'll talk to Regan here shortly. Next week, we head to Las Vegas, and we want your input. Who to start in Nevada? Call 1-844-4ASK-MRN, and we might just use your message on the show. We'll be back with Regan Smith right after these messages.
Got a question or opinion about your fantasy lineup? Give us a call at 844-4ASK-MRN, and it may get used on next week's show. The Inside Line will return in a moment.
Make your taste buds race with the newest sponsor of MRN, Creekstone Farms, premium Black Angus beef and all-natural Duroc pork. For over 20 years, Creekstone Farms has been fueling restaurants and food lovers across the nation with the highest quality, juiciest beef and pork products, all raised and grazed in the USA. Just one bite and you'll be a fan for life. Be the champion of your next family meal with beef and pork from Creekstone Farms. Visit creekstonefarms.com to order today or learn more.
The Toyota Racing Team wants to take a quick moment to congratulate Kyle Busch on his 2015 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series championship that he won in the Camry. Don't worry, this will be as fast as Kyle in his Camry. How fast is Kyle? So fast he's won a ton of races across all NASCAR series. Plus, he's won 133 of Toyota's 332 NASCAR victories. He's even won 38 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series races in the Tundra. And now here he is wearing the 2015 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series championship crown. So yeah, Kyle is really fast. We're proud of him and all the folks at Joe Gibbs Racing, whose teamwork made this win possible. Keep those checkered flags waving and take another victory lap in your Camry, Kyle. Good luck to all our drivers in the 2016 season. Head over to ToyotaRacing.com to find more info about the Toyota Racing Team and Kyle's journey to victory. Better get there fast before Kyle wins another race. Let's go NASCAR. Toyota, let's go places. NASCAR is a registered trademark of the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, Inc.
Let's talk more fantasy racing on The Inside Line. Here's Robbie and Tyler.
Regan Smith running in the 10th spot, having a great run for Tommy Baldwin Racing, but apparently overheating. We're seeing steam, water come out from that race car as we're down to 7 laps to go, and Matt Kenseth leads back to 1.
No doubt about the Regan Smith car. It was pushing water a couple of laps ago, but at this juncture, there's not a thing to be done about it. Keep the hammer down, see how far she'll go. Front of the pack, it's still Matt Kenseth with the lead.
That's what it sounded like Sunday in the Daytona 500 as our newest guest joins us on the hotline, driving the Golden Corral Chevrolet from Tommy Baldwin Racing. It's Regan Smith. Regan, how are you?
Guys, I'm doing good. How about yourselves today?
Doing great. First off, you sounded great on the air Saturday in the Xfinity race for us on MRN. How did you like that? How was your first adventure on air?
You know what? I had a blast on Saturday. That was something to be sitting next to Moody and Eli Gold was something I've always felt like would be cool to do, and it was even more fun after I got the opportunity to do it. Those guys are naturally professionals, and everybody on the MRN team, does a great job calling those races. The guys in the corners and on pit road, and I had no clue how much fun you guys actually have while you're doing it. There's some of the stuff that I heard, when we were off air and stuff like that. Just I sat there and laughed to myself and had a great time.
First off, actually after that, we went to Sunday in the Daytona 500. 8th place finish for Tommy Bolden Racing and the Golden Corral Chevrolet. That's a huge start to this year, right?
Oh, it is, and we couldn't have asked for more than that. I think it solidifies the hard work that the team's done during the winter, the people and personnel that's been brought in by Tommy to complement what he already had there last year. Are we going to get top 10s every week? Well, I think that's asking a lot at this point. But do we know there's certain places that we go and we're going to have a good shot at the top 10? Yes, and we got to capitalize on those as we build this program. This is something that it's going to be a work in progress. We're going to get better as the season goes on. I think that if we look at our goals today and look at them at the end of the year of where we think we should be running, they're going to be completely different. But to come out of the gate and get that first top 10 out of the way, I think it's only the third top 10 as a company that Tommy Bolden Racing's had, so that's a big deal. And to see the look in the guys' faces at the shop when I walked through there on Monday was a lot of fun. And we're going to enjoy the good ones together. We're going to enjoy the bad ones together. And at the end of the day, as long as we keep working hard, then I feel like we'll have more of those.
Regan, going into this season, you had about 2 weeks before you got down to Daytona for Speed Weeks. How different was this Speed Weeks for you, coming into a brand new team for you anyway, than it has been in the past when you've known months in advance who you're going to be driving for at the start of the season?
It was very different. I basically had 3 weeks to do 2 months worth of work, and it was the same for all of us, not just me, but the guys in the shop, getting seats mounted, getting helmets ordered, getting the stuff that is kind of normally elementary and that you don't worry about. That stuff was a big deal this year, and I went through the whole off season and didn't really have an off season. I was working from basically Thanksgiving when the season ended last year until when the deal came together with Tommy Bolden to get something solidified and get something that I knew I could drive and knew I could race. And quite honestly, when Tommy called, I had already kind of started shifting my brain and telling myself, okay, I'm going to go into the season without, a full-time ride, probably not going to be racing anything in Daytona. What comes next? What do I do to try and fix this? And a certain extent had started to focus on 2017 and, at the same time hoping I could get as many opportunities in 2016 as possible. Had kind of started focusing on getting things put back together to be in a full-time capacity somewhere in 17. And that phone call happened and the rest is kind of history, but it definitely made for a short off season. I'm looking forward to those off weeks. I'm going to definitely take and utilize the off weeks when they come as much as I can because I stressed out from Thanksgiving until almost January 31st.
Yeah, Regan, we had you on the show today, obviously, to talk about your great finish in the 8th place finish at Daytona, but also you're a bit of a fantasy guru. I talked to you on Friday. I asked you, should I start you in the Daytona 500? You told me yes. I didn't listen to you. That was obviously a mistake.
You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I told you need to start me on Sunday.
I know.
I'd like to point out I did start you on Sunday, and you got me a lot of points, so I really appreciate that. Although on lap 18.
I'm not going to steer you wrong. I'm going to give you my honest opinion. I can promise you that. That's I feel like hopefully I got a lot of people points. I know for myself it was I think 55 points on NASCAR.com, so that was a pretty good fantasy day.
Well, I'm going to tell you, when you were turned around backwards on lap 18 or whatever it was at the start-finish line, I was kind of thinking that was going to be a bad choice. And then here we come across the line and you're in 8th, and I'm like, yes, that was a really good choice.
I just wanted to make you sweat it out for a little bit. So all those people, and I don't know how many people picked me. There's no way to know that or whatever. But for the ones that did pick me, I just wanted to give them something to be a little nervous about. That's all. We don't want this to be easy by any means.
Right. We'll go into Atlanta this weekend. I've got you on my team again. You're at $10 on NASCAR.com Fantasy Live. Is $10 too low, too high for Regan Smith?
Well, I think right now $10 is probably about fair.
All right.
Last week I felt like where they had me, I think they had me quite a bit lower on the money pool last week, and I was pretty riled up about that, as you guys know. I was pretty much the bottom of the barrel, and I thought, man, here I am. I've had wins at speedway races before and run up front and all these things, and they got me cheaper than guys that were running their very first ever speedway race. So I was a little insulted by that last week. This week's going to be a completely different deal, and not just for me, but for the entire field. And I say that because if you look at what's going on, we have a new aero package. We're going to Atlanta, which is one of the most difficult handling racetracks on the circuit. Tires wear out, tires fall off. Guys can burn tires up on their car within the first 5 laps of a run and not even realize it. And that could cost them a lap, sometimes even 2 laps by the end of a run if you're not careful with it. There's a lot of unknowns this weekend, and I think that's what's going to make this the most difficult fantasy weekend of the year as you look at it on paper, because you don't know what team has done their homework. You don't know what team's going to come out of the gate strong and have the best cars down there until we get into practice and qualifying. And quite honestly, you might not want to make your picks until Saturday night, Sunday morning, when you've seen all the times throughout the course of the weekend and had a chance to pay attention to it.
I tend to agree with you on that. It's going to be a tough week because we do not know what's going to happen. I don't like restrictor plate races to pick on NASCAR Fantasy, and I didn't do too bad last week. But, Regan, sorry, this airs on Friday. You got to make picks before Saturday. Who do you like this week?
Well, to make it as simple, I'm going to go with the guys that I know are good at Atlanta and say, you know what, if they're good there, then we know for a fact that they're probably, even if their car's a little bit off, they can make that up. They can make their tires last and make up a little bit of ground one way or another. So I think the easy pick right off the top that you almost have to say he's been good for the past 10 years at Atlanta and really dominated is Kevin Harvick. If he's not on your fantasy team, I think that'd be about like not having Dale Jr. on your fantasy team last week. That backfired last week. I'm willing to bet probably 85% of fantasy owners had Dale Jr. on their team. And as he went crashing into the turn 4 wall, we all probably said, crap, what were we thinking? But I feel the same about Kevin this week. I think he's a lock. I think you have to combat whatever points somebody else is going to make by having him. If he goes out and leads the most laps or does whatever you would expect him to do at Atlanta, you have to combat those points. So that's one guy I've definitely got on my team. Another guy that I like is Joey Logano. I like Joey a little bit better than Brad. I think their money's very similar when you look at what the cost is for him. But what I like a little bit better about Joey is how he ran at Atlanta last year. It seemed like he was really good there in both the Xfinity and the Cup race. He gave Kevin a run for his money in both of those races and led some laps, ran well. I think he's in a situation with Penske that those cars appeared to be as good as anybody on the 2 low aero races last year when we went to Kentucky, when we went to Darlington. So I like Joey Logano. I like Carl Edwards. And, Carl's somebody maybe you don't always talk about. And he's got a new crew chief and a lot of unknowns this year going in to start the season. But if we're looking at the big money guys, the guys that are going to be a little more expensive, he's a couple bucks cheaper. That couple dollars can really save you further down your roster when you need to. So I think Carl is someone else to look at. He's won races at Atlanta, and any time that the racetrack is really slippery, Darlington last year, you got to win at Darlington last year. Any time that the track is slippery, any time that the handling is a big factor, that the tires fall off, Carl kind of seems like he rises just a little bit. I would have put Denny there, but I'm gonna say that Denny might have a little bit of a Daytona 500 hangover, as you want to call it, this week. He's been on a media tour. He's been all over the place. He's been busy. I know Joey went to Atlanta last year after Daytona and had a strong run, but I'm going to pick Carl over Denny right now.
All right, Regan, there's your team: Kevin, Logano, Carl, and Denny. Solid picks. And we mentioned Joe Gibbs Racing has been unbelievable with the low downforce package and also good at Atlanta. So thanks for joining us. Anytime you want to come join us in the studio, there might not be a lot of room, but you can come join us and talk fantasy anytime you want.
We'll make some room. We got a big desk. We got a wide-angle lens. There's plenty of room for the 3 of us. Hey, your son turned 1 this week. How was that celebrating the first birthday?
He did. It was, definitely exciting. It's crazy to think that a year went by that fast. It just – the first 3 months, any parent knows, you're kind of scratching your head like, man, is this ever going to, calm down? Is he ever going to sleep? Is it going to get normal at some point? And after 3 months, the 3 months to a year stage it's unreal. I mean, every day is something new. Every day is something different. They grow up, they mature in front of you. And my wife was sitting there the other night boo-hooing on the couch because she had a 1-year-old and he's not 11 months old or whatever it is anymore. And it just, you hear your parents, and I've heard people for years say, man, enjoy it because of how quick it does happen. And I understand what they're saying now when they say that.
Regan, thanks for joining us. Good luck this weekend in the Golden Corral Chevrolet for Tommy Bolden Racing. We'll put you on our fantasy team this week.
Hey, go for it. Go for it. Definitely. Don't be scared of the 7. We got this covered.
All right, Regan Smith. Always good to have someone who's on the racetrack as an insider on your fantasy team, and especially someone like Regan Smith who knows a lot about fantasy racing.
He's into it. He's into fantasy racing. He does fantasy hockey. He does fantasy football. He's a fantasy expert, and a lot of good information there, as you mentioned, from an inside source. A guy who's on the racetrack every week.
We'll be back shortly as we will give you our fantasy picks here on the Inside Line. Our winners next. You're listening to the Inside Line, presented by Hercules Tires.
Tyler and Robbie will be right back to talk more fantasy racing here on the Inside Line.
Don't miss the first ever Country 500, the Great American Music Fest at Daytona International Speedway, Memorial Day weekend. Join Luke Bryan, Jason Aldean, Kid Rock, Lady Antebellum, Florida Georgia Line, Willie Nelson, and many more for 3 awesome days and nights of music, camping, and more on the infield of the World Center of Racing. Visit country500.com for more information.
If you need a ready-mix truck with an excellent product support network, look no further than Houseby Mixer Systems. We offer superior performance and reliability. Houseby works with your local truck dealer for immediate product support for the ready-mix trucks, parts, and service. We can also offer direct sales. It's your choice. We also carry an inventory of ready-to-work mixer trucks. Visit houseby.com for more information.
We now return to the Inside Line with Robbie Mays and Tyler Burnett.
Final time here on the MotorRacingNetwork.com's Inside Line, presented by Hercules Tires. In my mind, there are about 10 race cars that can win this week, Robbie. We can only pick 2 to win. Regan Smith gave you his handful of picks there that he thinks is going to be very good on NASCAR.com Fantasy Live. Robbie Mays, your winner at Hotlanta this weekend.
My winner at Hotlanta this weekend is a guy who has the 3rd best driver rating. He has the best 10-race average finish. He's led 316 laps in his career there. His average finish is 12th. But he has never won at Atlanta Motor Speedway in the Sprint Cup Series. My pick to win this weekend is Matt Kenseth in the $20 General Toyota Camry. Going out on a limb a little bit, I think, but his forte throughout his career has been mile-and-a-half racetracks. So I like what that 20 car did last week at Daytona. Almost won the race. I think he's going to come ready to go in Atlanta this weekend.
I'm preaching Joe Gibbs Racing all the way this weekend, but I like Kevin Harvick. I like what Regan Smith said. Kevin Harvick, unbelievable at Atlanta. Top 5, both times we had the rules package last year, the low downforce package. He is very good. He led 116 laps at Atlanta last year. Of course, Jimmy Johnson won the race. He's on my team. But Kevin Harvick is my winner this weekend. Let's review our teams just briefly. Regan Smith said he likes Kevin Harvick, Logano, Carl Edwards, and Denny Hamlin. This week, I like Joey Logano. I like Jimmy Johnson, Martin Truex Jr., Ty Dillon, and Landon Castle. Of course, my winner is Kevin Harvick.
And I'm going Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, Chris Buescher, Regan Smith. And my winner this weekend is Matt Kenseth. Gets rid of the goose egg at Atlanta.
Yeah, we'll see what he can do. He's had a little rough stretch, but he was good last year. There's no question about that.
He's running full-time in the Sprint Cup Series this year, so that'll be good for him to get that footing and get back to the full-time status. If you don't know what we're talking about, you missed a great sound clip in the offseason.
Tweet us at MRN Fantasy using hashtag AskMRN. Again, the number to call for next week's show, 1-844-4AskMRN. You can give us your input on Las Vegas. For all of us here at MRN.com, our talented producer Daryl Smith, Robbie Mays, of course, I'm Tyler Burnett. It's been a good week.
It's been a great week. Coming off Daytona, going to Atlanta. Join the league on NASCAR.com. Search for MRN Inside Line, and you'll be able to play along with me and Taylor.
All right. 630 people's already in our league. It's going to be a good time. We'll talk to you next week as we head to Hotlanta this week, and we'll go to Las Vegas next week. You're listening to the Inside Line, presented by Hercules Tire. I'm Tyler Burnett. This is Robbie Mays. So long.
You've been listening to The Inside Line, presented by Hercules Tires. Stream us every Friday on MotorRacingNetwork.com or on the MRN app. The Inside Line is also available on demand at the MRN.com Media Center, or download it through iTunes or Stitcher. The Inside Line is a production of the Motor Racing Network.